support through planning regulations as well as policy. So getting into some of the challenges and barriers now to these 4 pathways that I've discussed. The first of which is image and place branding. Image and place branding is important to both the emergent art and culture scene as well as the nascent local food and wine industry. One of the key challenges in the region is the lack of consistent image and brand. This quote here describes the process in which the county was going through in an image branding, place branding exercise. They came to the realization that they didn't do a good job of marketing themselves because nobody knew who they were, where they were located, and what they had to offer. The second challenge that I'd like to highlight is regional culture. Many respondents pointed to a pervasive regional culture of resisting change and difference. This is what the key informant called a manufacturing mentality and describes. We have this manufacturing mentality. We have Fords and Chryslers and General Motors. And for people to pull their focus away from that and to put it on wineries is almost too difficult for them to do. So now that the economy's gone away, the region is, or this key informant is highlighting that the region is looking to alternatives, one of which is tourism. The third area that poses a challenge and a barrier to this region is tolerance. Scholars point to the importance of immigrant skills and social networks in the development of a strong local base of knowledge, skills, and know-how. Similarly, this research has highlighted that immigrant knowledge and skills are important to the development of the emerging greenhouse sector as well as the wine industry. Yet several of the interviews have provided consensus that there are undercurrents pointing to an underlying intolerance towards newcomers and other forms of difference in the region, one of which is migrant workers, which I discussed before because of the large agricultural base. This key informant is stating that we get about 4,000 migrant workers here for 8 months of the year. So yes, it's a great thing, but a lot of those businesses are seasonal. It makes it really hard to get that traditional uptown image that you really want to portray when the storefronts are constantly turning over. This is a problematic view from the perspective of having an open and inclusive community. The second is in regards to creativity-led economic development. This key informant is describing the perceptions of elected officials towards this type of idea and states, if you talk to elected officials about creativity-led economic development, they'll go, it's hippies, it's gay people, we don't want any of that stuff, it's artists. Artists don't generate any economic activity. And that's their way of thinking. So this community has identified that this is a significant challenge to moving forward. The fourth area is governance. Governance and coordination are crucial to economic development. One area of governance that has been particularly challenging is competition and a lack of collaboration between municipalities in Essex County. This 2 key informants are quoted here. The first one is discussing the challenge of getting everyone together and because they're trying to protect their domain, as they call it. The second quote is in regards to competitiveness. So the municipalities are known to compete with one another to attract big business, especially in manufacturing. This is an area that needs to change, and it's identified that this is just the old farmer way of thinking, according to the key informant. The second area is fiscal constraints. Many rural regions encounter this when trying to diversify and look to alternatives. This key informant states that we need a whole lot of money like Prince Edward County, and that's what they're comparing themselves to. The third area is an ad hoc and siloed approach to economic development. Currently in the county, there is only one municipality that has a formal economic development function. However, there's a regional body, but this regional body has encountered some internal conflicts and challenges and has recently undergone restructuring. So moving into some conclusions then, what does this case study tell us? I originally posed the question, is there evidence of a transition towards a creative economy in rural regions? And what are the potential pathways to prosperity in a creative rural economy? The 4 pathways that I've identified are, again, art, culture, and heritage, creativity in the food economy, innovation and entrepreneurship in agriculture, as well as renewable energy. This represents a wider view of what creativity-led economic development is, and it includes innovation and sustainability considerations. So just to reflect a bit on the barriers then that are associated. Regional culture, as I've discussed, this manufacturing mentality and tolerance is a huge challenge and barrier. Governance, the need for county leadership as well as coordination is essential to move forward. And I asked also the question, is a creative rural economy an appropriate rural economic development strategy? This is a huge and ongoing question, the applicability of these types of ideas to rural regions, given they have different contexts and cultures. So overall, this research has documented what appears to be the first stages of development of a creative rural economy in Essex County. As the manufacturing industry continues to experience challenges, the success of the region may lie in the ability to foster and grow areas identified in this research, as well as an entrepreneurial environment. The Economic Development Body has recently put out a draft regional economic development plan, which is a positive first step towards overcoming these challenges identified. However, in any strategic planning process, it's integral to consider the regional culture, the context, and the existing assets in the region. Lastly, what are some policy implications for economic developers based on this case study? The need to support the nascent and emerging industries that I've identified are critical, fostering knowledge exchange and learning between local firms as well. Formalizing the economic development roles so that there is a regional and holistic approach to this process will ensure that there is opportunities and prosperity for the municipalities as well as the county into the future. However, at the regional level and at the municipal levels, there's a significant need for leadership, coordination, and cooperation between all organizations and all bodies involved. So finally, the creative rural economy approach to economic development does hold potential and promise for Essex County, as well as other regions looking to grow sustainable and prosperous economies. I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to open the floor to you all for questions. Don't forget that in addition to Nirvana, we have Tara sitting here with us. So if we have your questions, please.
I'm interested to hear you talk a little bit about the question you raised about is the creative rural economy an appropriate development strategy? How did you approach that? You mentioned that you asked it, but I'd like to know how you would pursue it.
Well, it's, first of all, a difficult but necessary question to ask because I have difficulty believing that any model of economic development should be liberally applied to any place. So it was first posed in the interviews to the interview subjects to discern whether or not they had, first of all, knowledge of the creative economy, as well as trying to dig out what are the assets that they have in which they can build upon and further this type of economic development. I guess the second part to that then would be my answering the question and deciding whether or not this region or this is an appropriate model for this region. And I said yes, and I do believe that they are undergoing a transition towards this type of economic development and economy based on the pathways that I've identified. And these pathways were brought to me by the key informants through the interviews. So they're aware that these things, these assets and industries exist. However, framing it in the sense of whether it's the creative economy was the disconnect, I suppose. And I think through this research, this case study has shown that and hopefully will further that.
When Essex County was looking at its cultural assets as part of this, I wonder what you did with